All right, there he is, calling in from upstate New York.
Mm-hmm.
All right, how you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. Can't complain, but I did say earlier I wish it was Friday already. It's just been busy.
You
So
got
I just think the weekend's not long enough.
you got a lot of stuff going on. It sounds like.
Yes, we do.
Yeah, cool. Well, thanks, and I apologize to everybody. Saying last week we were out at the Channel Partners event out in
Mm-hmm.
Vegas. It was it was a little bit too much in Vegas. So I was out there the week before for the Kaseya event. Came home and flew back east for 4 days, and then flew back out for 4 days. I had just about enough of Vegas, but we were supposed to do this last week, and then I had to move flights, or had a flight canceled,
Mm-hmm.
and planes, trains, and automobiles. So we made it. We're here. We're good.
That's good.
Uh, yeah. So let's kind of get into it, man. You guys are moving pretty darn fast, but let's kind of take a step back and figure out
Yeah.
how the heck you got to this part. Because I was doing my reading on you, doing my research,
Mm-hmm.
trying to dig through the background
Yeah.
of Mr. Lee and Doward, and figured to hear it from yourself. But it's all some stops along the way before this latest venture. But let's get
Yeah.
it from yourself. So let's get back let's hear the origin story. Let's
The
hear who
origin
you
story.
from.
Actually, I'll tell you the truth. I did not even want to get into computers. All
Really,
right. Actually, I have to give my grandmother credit for this because
grandmother.
being from Europe, I was in university and had about 6 months left before I graduated my master's. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go back to where I want to live. I've had enough. I just want to go back and just take, being broke, the whole 9 yards. But being my grandmother, being traditional Irish that she is, you got to go and work. You got to go work. And for about 2 weeks, she was on my case. And then I was at my cousin's hardware shop down in Dublin, and I just opened up the Sunday magazine, Sunday newspaper. Right in the center was a advertisement for Gateway Computers opening up a new manufacturing plant, literally 5 minutes away from where my grandmother lived. So I thought, you know what? I could still get to sleep. I could wake up 5 minutes before work and get to work on time. It was only 5 minutes away. And that's when it started. I literally fell in love with the guts of a computer and providing support. And that's when it just started. Beforehand, I just saw computers as a gaming and doing my essays and dissertation for college. That's about it.
Uh-huh.
And then that's when my love started. And that was back in 1998. And then I emigrated to America in 1999. I met my wife, and it just started from there in cybersecurity at that point. So I've been in cybersecurity about 20 years now, plus more.
Wow, there's a ton of threads we can pull on, but
I know, right?
and we'll get there. Yeah, meeting the wife,
Yeah,
immigrating to the States. All right, so we'll
yeah,
get there. But
yeah,
so it's interesting because it sounds like you were right at that conversions. It might have been early, but right at the conversions where a lot of U.S. companies, a lot of global companies started to look at Ireland as far
yeah,
as
yeah,
a place to call home. Right, a lot
yeah,
of
yeah,
investment, a lot of tech transfer came into
absolutely.
whether it be Dublin or out in Cork or Galway or what have
Yeah,
you. But
yeah.
yeah, so I guess that was right at the front end of that. It sounds like.
It was the beginning of the stage of the Celtic Tigers, they called it, right at that time with the economy, with all the technology.
Right.
You had Microsoft, you had Dell, Gateway, all the major players. Even IBM has got it still today. Has got a huge campus in Dublin for a lot of their AS 390s or 360s back in the day of the mainframes, which they still build there. But it's gone to a point now where um, I'm glad I came to the U.S. because I will tell you the truth. The opportunity the U.S. has given me is a huge. I don't think I would have had the opportunity to the education and the experience that I've gotten back home because things are different back home. I'm not saying in a bad way, but more of a. At the time, they weren't as advanced as the U.S. was when it came to
Mhm.
technology, because and so forth. So, but over the years, I've wanted to do entrepreneurial stuff, wanted to start. So, I worked for a large consultancy firm here in Rochester, New York. So I got to tell you the origin story. So I moved to Hawaii, where my wife is from, and then from Hawaii to Rochester, and then I came here sight unseen, and that's probably another whole conversation. But sight unseen, I didn't even know anything about Rochester. Didn't even know that Xerox started here, Kodak, Bausch and Lomb, and it's a lot of technology started here. And so I got an opportunity to work for a consultancy firm here, and then I had an opportunity to actually be a founder for a MSP. In 2005, we started an MSP with a few of us, and we were there for about 10 years. And I got kind of a little burnt out for a little bit because I was doing consulting, cybersecurity, traveling, and then I went back into corporate for a little while. And then, go back to corporate is not the same as consulting, so your love starts coming back for consulting. And then I actually, a lot of my clients were reaching out to me saying, hey, could you do part-time work for us for cybersecurity? We got CISO work. We need you to do this for me. And that is when I saw the opportunity for Cyrisma. That's back in early 2018, to build a platform that allows SMB, but more of organizations to be able to do more, kind of like the Kaizen, do more with less, right? In the sense of, let's make it simplistic, make it accessible, and make it affordable for cybersecurity. Because when I was working with my clients, we would recommend solutions and they would turn away. They said, hey, can't afford it. We'd have resource issues, time, money, and people. Then we created a focus group and said, hey, what if we were able to build a platform that gave you all these functions and features into it? And they said, if somebody had that, we would buy it tomorrow. And then so I formed the company in 2018 with two other of my friends. And then we spent about 18 months developing the platform and then launched Cyrisma in September of 2020.
Awesome.
So we had to wait for a little bit of pandemic. We did an early start and didn't kind of go so well because all of a sudden pandemic hit and took away the two of the markets that we were going after. And so we kind of said, you know what, let's speed up our channel and focus on the MSPs and MSSPs. And we've been building a reputation right now. And then now we've extended out to other areas and markets, and it's starting to come to fruition of our plan and our vision.
So for someone that had no interest in computers, you pivoted pretty hard into the whole security space.
Yeah, exactly, right?
CISM, CISSP.
Yeah.
I guess when was that? Is that, you mentioned kind of starting kind of the MSP and then seeing the matriculation and in and out of consulting, and then but what was it about security? It's just the market opportunity? Was it solving
No, actually
problems?
it wasn't. Believe it or not, I actually growing up wanted to be a police officer.
Oh,
So
wow.
it was kind of like wanted to be a police officer. It was kind of like one of my things I wanted to be an officer, law, be an officer of the law. But it didn't come to fruition, right? Because of certain circumstances in my life, relationships and so forth didn't actually happen. So as security came along, I get to present with like the FBI and other places and stuff like that allowed me to realize that, hey, I can actually be involved in law enforcement without being a law enforcement officer and keep my wife happy, because I wouldn't be carrying a gun or a shield or anything of that nature. But she had this running joke when she would tell people to ask what did I do for a living? She says, he's a security guard. He carries around a plastic gun and a shield, right? And that was her joke to tell everybody. But that's one of the things I want to do. And I really loved security because it got me an opportunity not only to see how to protect networks from a technology standpoint, which is my background, but then also getting into the strategic elements and talking to executive leadership. And then if there was an incident, I get the chance to talk to law enforcement, lawyers, the whole nine yards. So it gave me a full depth and breadth of stuff. And that's why I really enjoy every moment of cybersecurity. So
you protect and serve in a digital capacity, it sounds like.
Correct. Exactly.
Something along those lines.
Yes,
so
exactly.
A couple of the stops, right? You mentioned kind of the MSP and again, doing some kind of digging around. There was like Synergy Global Solutions.
Yeah, they used to be called Western New York Computing Systems here in Rochester, New York. And then they acquired another company called Synergy, and then they generated a whole group called Synergy Global Solutions. And then from there, I met one person there. We spun off and created a whole new MSP called Pervasive Solutions. And we did that for about 10 years. And then in 2015, I kind of left and went back into corporate for a little while. And then from there, I kind of got the love again at consulting, and then did it part-time. And then that's when Cyrisma came to fruition.
Awesome. So you've been into the MSP space, in and around the consulting MSP space for quite a while now. So what, I guess in your kind of, opinion, how's it evolved? I mean, what's evolved, for better or worse from the MSP's perspective over the last 10, 15 years? Yeah,
there's a lot more. So back then it was more focused on break fix, right? And getting people into managed services. And then, then it was like an explosion. Everybody wants to be an MSP, right? And it was who has the cheapest price. And it was the quickest to the bottom kind of thing. But one of the things that we wanted to push was that cybersecurity has to be a part of MSP. You can no longer accept that it's a traditional. You got antivirus, you got firewall management, and you got some web content filtering, the typical things that MSPs put in. So we kind of instilled cybersecurity in a way of saying that it's a part of your MSP, which means you get a CISO, you get all your policies and procedures done for you, everything around that. And that's one of the differentiators that we had. But what was happening was then a lot of times MSPs weren't engaging in patch management either, right? They're kind of focusing on the break fix to maintain that level of availability. So there was a lot of times we start seeing other MSPs falling to the wayside because they're so focused on the availability and not the confidentiality or the integrity of systems. And that's where it's now changing, right? A lot of them are scrambling now to kind of start getting into cybersecurity and looking at tools, right? So that the tools, the problem they have is they have this set stack and they have this set dollar amount, and they need to know, how do we plug in cybersecurity without having to charge the customer more money or go back and ask them for more money. And now you've got, federal government really pushing down through CISA to say that, hey, MSPs need to really start looking at cybersecurity or you are part of the problem. And if there's any class action lawsuits or legal ramifications, they're also going to be included. So it's a kind of a scramble. Micro MSPs are the ones that are having the hardest time, I think, because they just don't have the resources compared to the ones that, the top 1,000 MSPs that have millions of dollars in revenue, 100 plus employees. So they're looking for solutions that can make it easier for them with automation. But automation is not the key. You still need to have some involvement through your QBRs and understanding what's going on in that environment rather than allowing 100% automation. And I think that's the difficult part that we live in right now.
Yeah, I think it's great, and kind of we'll transition to here Cyrisma in a second. Well, let's just do that now, because I was going to say is that going through the platform, going through the site, and what I've seen, you guys look like you have a ton of resources, ton of educational resources, case studies, white papers that are geared toward helping your partners understand the complexity, understanding, and it's often, I think we talked about this quite a bit on this podcast, the platform, about this maturity model. When we launched, so one of the company that I launched back in the day was ID Agent, and it's a great outcome. Sold it to Kaseya, started in dark web monitoring, and it was really about showing the risk, right? Breaking down that barrier, saying most common denominator, is this your password or not, right? And then layer in all the other security solutions that you needed, because you could finally relate. And I never got to the point where it built out the entire platform like you guys have, and got into vulnerability and risk, and assessments and stuff. But it sounds like you guys have taken a pretty comprehensive approach, not just from an assessment standpoint and just showing the risk, and to your point, talking about automation, but it sounds like there's a lot of resources behind it as well.
Yeah, and it is because when you think of the bad actors, what are they after? Your data, right? So, and data is like the new oil spill. It's everywhere, right? It's in the cloud, it's in your email, it's on a key fob, it's here, it's there. How do you know where your data is? Who has access to it? So that's one of the things that we thought about, is how do we get people to understand that it's no longer the defense and death where you go from the perimeter in. You have to start from from inside out, right? So we said, when we originally thought of Cyrisma, we thought, okay, let's look at the data first, right? Understand where the data is located. What type of sensitive data is it? Who has access? Then we thought, okay, then let's take the next step out, and that is the system that houses that data. Are they vulnerable? And then the next step was, are they securely configured? And the methodology is that if you reduce your sensitive data footprint and then implement a risk-based vulnerability management solution and then have secure configuration, you can reduce your threat landscape by up to 60%. That's a huge element just for three things that you can do. And then you've got your EDR and all the rest of it adds into it. So then we start bringing in dark web, because you'd be surprised that as MSPs, they'll have dark web and ID Agent and other things out there. But then what we're seeing is that they're looking at not only at the time for, is your account breached, right? Is your account breached? We go a little bit further deeper in by saying, okay, have you been talked about on ransomware forums? Are they talking about your firewall and other things in there, like IPs and other things? Because not always bad actors talking about your domain. Then you can talk about IPs, because things get missed because they know they're looking for stuff. So we wanted to go a little bit deeper, because a lot of organizations didn't even know that they had information already out on the dark web belonging to them. So we incorporated that in. And now we're starting to engage on compliance. Now, one of the biggest things that we want to do, and it's been organically grown for us, is that we're getting a lot of requests from MSSPs now to say, hey, can you do the strategic level of GRC compliance, self-assessments, the maturity model, because you got the tactical element, all the stuff associated with that. Now move into the strategic, and now you're kind of giving us that 360-degree view from a tactical and strategic element. So that's where we call ourselves an ecosystem now than just strictly a feature-rich platform. An ecosystem is based on, like Kevin, you putting in requests and say, hey, I would like to see this. And then as the more people respond back on that element, then we actually incorporate that into the platform based on feedback from our partners and customers.
I love it. So how much of the conversation, or, you know, maybe even just kind of the sales conversations driven around, you know, put compliance in one bucket and insurance in another? Or they're
going hand in hand right now.
Linked?
It's kind of funny you say that, because what's happening is we get a lot of conversations when we're talking to our partners. They're saying, hey, right, is there any way we can use your platform to spit out a report that we can hand to insurance companies to say, hey, can we reduce our premiums? Right. So we incorporated a functionality in our platform, is that we have monetization of risk. So as you collect sensitive data, we can tell you how much your sensitive data would be cost if it was on the dark web, how much potential cost of ransomware, what's your breach notification, then you have your residual risk cost calculator. And then we have a bunch of questions that insurance brokers and insurance people have asked us to ask people, so they can offset some of their risk to insurance and show where they're negligent. Because we've had partners come back to us and says, you know what, before we jumped on you, we had one customer that actually had a vendor connected to them via VPN. Their vendor got infected with ransomware, crossed the VPN, hit our client. The client went to declare it. They were negligent because they didn't have a vendor risk management program in place. And then they were on the hook for $600,000. And that's a huge hit. So what we want to do is to show them where they're negligent. And so we want to build out that platform to say, okay, from a insurance standpoint, where are you with that potentially a meeting? Because you don't want to be negligent or have some time where they say, no, you're not able to declare it, and you're stuck with all that money that's going to cost you to bring your business back online again. So we want to see how quickly we can do that. So we've had conversations with other people about maybe emulating something like a PCI element to like insurance, to say what they're meeting, are they maintaining that, and then providing that. Because why should you be dinged for the next person next to you not doing their job to securing your environment? You're doing everything you can to be proactive, but you're getting dinged because the premiums are going up every year because of the number of breaches that are happening. Now, the concerning factor that we have is that because of what's happening in the Ukraine, a lot of attention for the bad actors are focused on that. If that ever stops, that's going to all of a sudden come back to where it was beforehand, and potentially the number of attacks are going to go back up again, which means now is the time to be proactive, and let's not be reactive when that's something like that happens.
Yeah. So how do you start the conversation with you talked about the, I call it like the merging end of the MSP marketplace, maybe the sub 5 million, maybe in the sub like $2.5 million MSP. Like what's typically the first conversation you have with them? Is it they're coming in and they're, looking to be educated, or they had an incident, or how do you normally engage with an MSP?
So it's a combination of both, because what's happening is a lot of their clients are becoming a little bit more self-educated around cybersecurity. So they're asking their MSP by saying, hey, because we're doing a cyber insurance and it's saying that we need to do a vulnerability scan. Do you have that capability? Okay, let's go and find a solution to put it in. But they always look for that. They're not looking at the other elements because they're only focusing on what the client is asking and not what the client actually really needs. So that's where it starts off. So they'll come into us and say, we're looking for a vulnerability scanning solution. And then when we do the demo, they'll see all the other functions and they're starting like, oh, hang on a second here. This is where we can make more money doing this as a service rather than an individual function, because it's a request from an actual client that's asking for it for cyber insurance. So the conversation is relatively easy. It's just that when they see the number of features, sometimes it gets a little overwhelming because they're focused on the one thing. But then once they start playing with it, they start realizing that, hey, this is actually not as bad because we're getting a lot more functionality and features, and we can actually consolidate tools, because on the back end, we can eliminate tools, other solutions that they've had in their technology stack for a long time. They can incorporate that and utilize our platform to reduce their overall monthly spends as well.
That's awesome. So you talk on the, just in general about this concept of secure baseline, right? Mm-hmm. So like kind of coming in, essentially part of the assessment, is just understanding like where you are, right? And is that something where an MSP can take that to the customer and say, all right, this is the starting point. Now let's start talking about what's next.
Yeah, so we have what we call the overall cyber risk assessment, right? And what that is basically saying, hey, once you've done all the features in our platform, you can spit out a report and hand that to your customer, especially for your initial assessment by saying, hey, it's not about this previous MSP was bad and we're better. None of that stuff. Give it to them and say, hey, currently right now you're an F, and here's the reasons why. You've got sensitive data and it's everywhere. Your vulnerability management aspect, externally, internally, even web applications are not great. We need to work on that. You're also on the dark web. Here's an example set of data that we have. We can show you more information when we log in to the present. We log into the actual platform itself. So the goal is that it's not about reports, right? The goal is that, Kevin, say, for example, you're a client, you're an MSP. You're so used to doing reports that you've got resources that you're tied up for 10, 15 hours a month generating these reports. Why don't you allow your client to log in to the actual dashboard, and they can actually see real time? So you're reducing the amount of man hours that you have to invest in generating reports, and they can see it real time. And so the goal is that to allow you as the business owner to get reasons of why we're investing in this money. We're gone from an F and now we're at a B, and here's the trajectory and here's the steps that we've taken. Now, in the secure baseline, it's not about whether you're doing it right or you're doing it wrong. It's about saying, here's an industry best practice for securing your Windows machines or your Linux, your Mac, or anything of that nature. Here's the best practices. And it comes from either federal government or DoD if you've got those type of clients, or CIS if you're doing benchmarking from them. And what it's trying to do is to get you think beyond vulnerability management and things like that, is to bring in secure configuration, because you can eliminate a lot of risk that the user can actually engage in. But if you reduce that, it makes it harder for them to overcome some of those blocks to install stuff they're not supposed to, or do things they're not supposed to. And maybe they don't mean it, because they'll click on things and investigate, because we're all inquisitive, right? There's a big red shiny button that says do not touch. How many people will actually get compelled to actually touch it, right? Yeah. So that's what we want to try and do, is that it goes to not only technology, but also be that kind of like catch-all, that last line of defense, that you remove the person out of the equation to a certain extent from technology.
Yeah, I imagine, in assumption on my part, but I imagine that giving the customer the ability to log in, turning it more into a team sport, ultimately ends up helping you become more sticky with the customer.
That is correct. Absolutely. Yeah. And a lot of our partners were very shy at the beginning to do that. And now they're starting to see the realization when they start seeing the executive or the CEO of the company at 2:00 in the morning logging into the platform, and he's like looking at stuff because he wants to see what's going on, right? And then asking more pointed questions, that when you do your risk or your security meeting with them and whatever committee they have, you can go right into the dashboard and you could actually have great one-on-one conversations, because then they want to be proactive. Because when you show them, especially with the dollarization, that they have $1 million worth of risk looming over their heads, and all the MSP is doing is asking for $50,000 of investment to fix these elements. $50,000 is a lot cheaper than spending $1 million.
Absolutely.
And that's one of the things that we're seeing, where partners will come back to us and say, hey, we just got the customer to spend $30,000 by you just showing what the dollarization of risk is, right? By saying, because that's what's happening, is they'll say, you're giving us an F. So Kevin, what would you say if I give you an F? You'd turn around and say to me would be, what does that mean in dollar and cents? Because all I care about is the bottom line, right? And that's what it needs to be.
Yeah. It's almost like, again, I'm just kind of going out on a limb here, but it's almost like you're turning it in, it's almost automating QBRs. I don't know if that's like the right way to describe it, but often it's, I think one of the challenges for MSPs is that it ends up being, to your point, like spending a certain amount of time every month, every quarter, generating reports, getting ready for the QBR that oftentimes just kind of flies over the head of the customer, and it's a snapshot in time. But if you're turning it into a team sport, it's almost like it's an ongoing, everyone's on the same page, and it makes the concept of a QBR, I think, even more powerful, because you're both looking at the same data, and this is assuming that the customer's logging in and semi-sophisticated or what have you. But I imagine it helps to make the conversation that much easier.
Oh, it does. And it does, especially that we introduced a function called our mitigation engine, where if we find sensitive data, you can actually assign it to end users to mitigate. So that means then when you come to that meeting and you log into the dashboard of the customer saying, well, why have we moved from a D to a C? The reason being is because Mary Jane and John Smith and Liam haven't actually mitigated the data that was assigned to them. We've identified that risk. We said to them, they haven't done it. That's the reason why. So it brings only accountability, because whether you're in corporate, whether you're MSP, everybody tends to assume that cybersecurity is the MSP or the IT function, when it's not. We're trying to say that it actually has to be at the data owner level as well when it comes to certain things. Mm-hmm. So it does bring a level of that teamwork together, because nobody wants to be called out and have called out in a meeting by saying, hey, Liam didn't do his mitigation and that's why we didn't move to a D, right? But now with the leadership seeing what they can see, they can maintain, hey, you got to get this done, Liam. Please let us get this done, because we got a big actual opportunity right now, and they're asking us about our cybersecurity. Where do we stand? And we don't want to show them that we're a D. We want to be a lot higher than that. Let's move in that direction, because security is a part of business now. It's not a bolt-on after effect. It's, as you know, when you see vendor risk management, where's your policies and procedures? When's the last time you did an assessment? What's your security program look like internally? So these are all things that comes to the surface when you bring, like you said, when you work as a team, because now they start seeing business, sales, reputation, brand, all that kind of stuff comes into play.
Yeah, no, I don't know. I keep going on this path, but it's, you hear about so many QBR type tools, and you can debate the effectiveness of them, depending on what angle they're coming at, whether it's security angle or if it's just business operations, process operations, that kind of stuff. But I think there's going to be a push, and it's not about me providing my opinion, but I think there's going to be a push to get more sticky with the end customer ultimately. Like, because more sticky that you and your MSP becomes with their end customer, right? The longer lifetime value, and I know there's for some vendors there's a push for multi-year contracts, to the MSP, but at the end of the day, right, the more you can make it predictable, the more you can make it a team sport. You're creating more of a healthy ecosystem up and down the stack, from the end user all the way up to the vendor. And I think a lot of vendors miss the mark from that standpoint. It sounds like you guys are going down that path, which is, to me, it's fantastic.
We are. We're even bringing out a whole new UX UI next month based on feedback from our partners and customers. So, and we're doing a huge launch and a few other initiatives as well in June, that it's just driving us to list even more so to our partners, right? And like we just recently released patch management. And that was not due to the fact of us wanting to do patch management. It was the fact of 90+% of our partners will put in requests that we have what we call feature requests. And we look at it, patch management is the next logical thing. Because if you're doing vulnerability management, the next thing I want to do, so we just launched phase 1, which is third-party Windows application. You can patch directly within the platform with an agent. And that was all based on feedback from our partners. And now they can do it. And so when we released it last week, we got great compliments from our partners by saying, hey, you just reduced over 1,000 or 1,900 vulnerabilities just by getting rid of the third party, because sometimes our RMM tool doesn't patch them, right? And that's then how do we do that? It's a manual process, or they're having to buy another tool just for that. And that's what we're trying to do, is make sure we have that single pane of glass for them.
To me, it sounds like it's a damn good thing you listened to your grandmother way back then.
I know. Tell me about it, right? So I give her credit every time somebody is. I was great at gaming. I still like gaming. Don't get me wrong. I like, I'm not a World of Warcraft guy. I'm a first person shooter kind of thing. So Call of Duty, Battlefield, that kind of thing. So I still love gaming. But I see computers now in a totally different light, and I do give her credit for that. If she didn't stick to me with traditional aspect around it, I would be where I am today. And what was driving it is that I gotta tell you, this is a funny story. So when I started at Gateway Computers, I got another job somewhere else. My grandmother, being traditional Irish, their place is that if you join a company, you're there for the rest of your life, right? So when I joined the other company, she called up Gateway Computers to ask if I was fired.
Wow.
Yes. So I got called from my old supervisor, because she didn't understand the idea. Said, hey, I got a better job. I got an assistant IT manager, more money. And she didn't believe me. She thought I was let go from the previous job, and didn't understand that, ladder hopping. You get, you do things for a while and you get an opportunity. Didn't understand that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, but I give her credit. If she didn't push me, I don't think I would be here today what I'm doing.
That's awesome. So, you can bounce around a little bit, because you mentioned, you ended up in Rochester via, Hawaii, but
Yeah.
what's the tech scene like in Rochester these days?
There's a lot. There's a lot, especially innovative from Buffalo, from Rochester to Syracuse. There's a lot of technology, and even more so now is when we started our company, we were looking for investment from VCs. A few VCs, we said, "Oh no, you got to go to New York City or Washington D.C. or Silicon Valley." And we're like, "No," but there's actually a lot of investment firms here that actually want to invest and keep companies here in the Western New York area. So there's startup companies coming up. You've got 43 North, which is bringing, that's a huge competition in Buffalo that bring companies into Buffalo area, and so forth. So very big into the local scene from a technology standpoint. You've got Cloud Checker. Everybody's heard of Cloud Checker, right? That's a
Sure.
huge thing. That's in Rochester. You've got TPG in Syracuse. That's a big one in there. It used to be called SpinCar, but they just changed their name. It's another technology company here and locally. And various others as well. Sweetwater, Patient Care that just got sold out of Buffalo. So there's a lot of technology ranging from different industries, from I call them gaming to right through to healthcare to cybersecurity and everything in between.
That's awesome. So it
Yeah.
sounds like it was ultimately a good move landing in upstate
Yeah.
New York.
It was. When I first got here, everybody said I either have mental health issues because I moved from Hawaii to Rochester, or Ireland to Hawaii to Rochester, or I'm in the witness protection program. That's what he got me to.
Right.
So they asked
Oh
me,
my goodness.
is Liam my real name? I just tell them, I said, no, my name is Ryan Smythe. So I actually have a t-shirt my wife made for me called, my name is really Ryan Smythe, not Liam Downward. So it's a joke with
Oh
my
my
wife.
goodness.
Yeah.
Wow. So what, I guess you said you guys are I don't know, gearing up for actually a lot of big releases, a lot of big things. I guess
Mhm.
what's next for you guys?
Next for us is basically H2 of our year. We're going to focus on GRC. So we'll actually start incorporating a lot of vendor risk management stuff, policies and procedures, all that kind of stuff built into our platform. And it's natively growing that way. We're starting off already. We've got a tactical compliance already built out, rolled out. Microsoft Secure Score. We're going to be tying into AWS for compliance. All these other things that are happening. So because we want that single tool, they got to have access to a lot of things and be able to generate a report from there. Now, what's the next thing for us? Next thing for us is to be able to start. We've got international, so we are now going to focus on international customers as well. We've got quite a few international customers, so we're actually in Australia, Africa, Europe, Central America, South America, and it's not because we went after them; they've come to us.
Wow.
And they've come to us in that thing. So the only area that we don't have customers in yet is Asia right now. So so that's there, but that's coming halfway through H2. That's what we're going to focus on, is international customers as well.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are, for starting at 18, you guys are moving pretty damn fast, which you got to be pretty exciting, but then, it's got to be
It's
a
just,
lot to
it's
take in.
exciting. It's a lot of
Yeah.
work. It's trying to be lean, right, at the same time and do stuff. So we're learning a lot of stuff as we go along. But we also love the industry that we're in, right? So we've opened up to other markets as well because of that. So we've kind of now gone from MSP to MSSPs. We have IR firms now. We're now talking to insurance companies and so forth. So we're opening up that realm from a channel instead of just focusing on MSPs. We're gaining traction in other areas as well in cybersecurity.
Awesome. Well, I'm a big fan of what you guys are doing. Like I say, the way you're, I think the messaging, the resource that you guys are bringing to the channel, I think
Mm-hmm.
the way you guys are building this out is
Yeah.
it's pretty smart. You get to see
Yeah.
a lot of tools, a lot of different approaches, but it sounds like, just from what I've seen, it seems like you guys are doing it the right
Yeah.
way, which is
Yeah.
probably a testament to the growth that you guys are
Yeah.
having.
But I will tell you, though, being an entrepreneur is not as glitzy and glamour as everybody makes it out to be when you see on TV, like, the TV shows around startups. There's a lot of work and effort, but you really got to love the job that you do, because it's still
Absolutely.
not finished. And even though some people say when you get to 10 years old, you still got to think like a startup, because things change very quickly. You got to be dynamic, got to pivot, but expect a lot of hours. So my wife used to tell me work was my wife and my wife was my mistress. So that's what she used to tell me, because I would work many hours.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's spoken like a true entrepreneur. I mean,
Yeah.
it's, any particular thing, I guess along those lines, anything particular thing keep you up at night?
What things keep me up at night? Cybersecurity. What is the next thing that we should think about or talk about with our partners, because it's always dynamically changing, and it's fearful, because today you might be bleeding edge, tomorrow you're behind the scenes, right? So you're behind the curveball with the bad actors. So we got to think of how do we keep moving forward, because we always seem to be 2 or 3 steps behind, and that's a scary thing, especially in the MSP world, because it only needs to happen with one of their clients. It can cause a ripple effect. So we got to try and think, how do we keep them happy and keep winning their business month in and month out.
That's it, man. That's it. Well, what's the best way to find you or the company?
So you can go to www.cyrisma.com. We're also on LinkedIn. We're also on Reddit, and various other places. You can reach me at liam.d@cyrisma.com directly. I am the CEO of the company, so I don't turn any email away. Because I'm a CEO, I don't respond back. I do because I call myself the undercover boss. I work in every different area, whether it's sales, if it's help desk, or doing, because it kind of makes me feel like I'm still part of it, in a way.
Yeah.
So I have no problem of answering any email that anybody wants to put forward.
Look, I think that's one of the best qualities of CEOs. I mean, it's I was just thinking about this over the weekend. I spent a lot of time at Kaseya after they bought my last company, and it's amazing to see Fred, CEO of Kaseya, being involved in so many aspects of the business, but he had his finger on the pulse. And so you study some of the really successful CEOs in this space or in other industries.
Yeah.
Certainly they know how to delegate, and when it makes sense, obviously, and if you get the right teams around them. But having your finger on the pulse and understanding what the customer is looking for, and I think everybody can relate to what keeps you up at night, because you're always thinking like, what's next and how can I get out in front of it. I mean, that's just a hallmark of, I think, really strong CEOs. And so it sounds like it's paying off for you. So
it's paying off, but it's painful. It's painful because it's my dad was here the other week, and he says all work makes for a dull boy. Because I didn't really get to spend much time with him, because I was just constantly in and out of meetings until 8 o'clock at night, 9 o'clock at night. And then by the time I go out there, he's falling asleep. So that's basically was it. So remember, there's a life after work, right? And you got to have that happy balance. But startups, you don't have that luxury, unfortunately.
Sounds like a witty Irish proverb.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. So I think the most time I spent with him was actually picking him up from the airport and dropping him off, him and his wife off at the back of the airport to go on their cruise back to Europe.
Oh wow. Good for him.
Yeah.
Good for him.
So it's as you know yourself, Kevin. This is your second time around with a startup company yourself. The amount of hours that you have to put in. You have to be the face of the company. You've got to do webinars. You got to do this. You got to do that. But when you really get the chance to do work is when everybody ends their day and you're still working, and then weekends you're catching up, right? So that's tough.
Yeah, for me, it's getting up as early as I can, because I enjoy that 4:30, 5 o'clock to 7. That's like my most productive time, when no one's up, and I can focus on either like getting ready for the day or like putting out some of the fires, what have you. But you're right. It feels like it never stops. But
exactly. And you say that you tell yourself this is not going to last forever, and then 5 years later you're still saying that it's not going to last forever. So.
Well, look, Liam, if that's indeed your real name,
yeah, right.
No, I've appreciated this. I really appreciate the chat, and thanks for dealing with my travel schedule here last week. But like I said, I'm a big fan of what you guys are doing. I feel like I have a lot of conversations with particularly security companies, and very fond of obviously a lot of partners and companies in the platform. But I feel like you picked up on where I might have left off on a couple of my pursuits back in the day, and so I'm part envious and part thrilled for you guys. So
I appreciate that.
Good
man.
stuff.
Thank you.
Good stuff.
Thank you. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining us here, and we'll have these links to you in the show notes, and we'll put this out and encourage everybody to check in and check out what you guys are doing, and good luck the rest of the week. I know it's Monday, but hopefully you get to Friday.
I know, right? I appreciate it. Thanks very much, Kevin. Thanks everybody that's watching.
You got it.
Bye.